Hey, y'all. Oh, I picked the wrong screen. Hey, y'all. Sorry I'm a tad bit late. I was working on stuff and I got caught up. Like, I had my stuff in town. Had to go pick up my groceries and wanted to grab lunch because we were running behind. I was running behind. And when I got home, got everything done, but still needed to eat. And I'm like, I am not going to sit here and crunch into the mic. There is a limit to how much I will annoy y'all with my how much I eat. So, but let me put the announcement in Discord. Alrighty. So I had a thought, I had a plan, and then I was like, you know what? I better check out this plan. And so I did. Hey Chico, hey shenanigans. I was like, I need to check out this plan and see exactly Buccaneer Bay. If I can do it or not. Because it sounded really good, but it also sounded like a possible issue, and it is an issue. I was going to fish in ESO and read The Hobbit to y'all, but The Hobbit is still under copyright, and so I am not allowed to do that. Boo. But that's fine. I will do other things. We'll read other things. Why am I in Hrothgar? Oh yeah, I needed to kill stuff in here. That's fine. We'll go find another place to fish. Yeah, I got another one of those big arch meals. It was so tasty. They really are good. If y'all have a chance to go grab one, you should. They have like pickles and fried onions, and it's so tasty. And like some sort of white cheese. I don't know what the white cheese is, but it's good. But yeah, I normally do wait 50 years after the author's passing, unless it is in a sort of trust, and then it's 100 years. And he printed The Hobbit in 1937, so I have another 12 years, I believe. Believe me, I would do it. Actually, I'm so freaking tempted to just do it in the Discord. I want to read this story, but it can't be anything on here. So yeah, all of his books are currently in a trust that's held by his family. So nope, can't do it. There's even examples of like ways of reading it publicly, but you have to get permission from his family, from the trust that's in control of his family. So where shall we go? I've been really like, well, I want to go there, but at the same time I don't. Where's my home? That's my home. Let's go to Southern Elsewhere. I like Southern Elsewhere. But yeah, we may end up planning a reading time. Because I was like, I'm gonna go fishing and reading The Hobbit. That sounds perfect and beautiful and wonderful. Because I've already finished all the movies, but nope, can't be done.
Fascinating application of the technique.
Next time I'm in the field, I think I'll bring a great warhammer.
Like another option, although I'm not sure how much I want to do this, is start delaying my Friday streams for like 2 hours. But see, that's gonna mess up my throat. But and for 2 hours, and those 2 hours would be in the Discord reading the book, and then after that we hop over to the stream on YouTube's. That's always a possibility. I really like fishing in here. It's so pretty. South Elsewhere is like one of my favorites. I need to find a home because I've been thinking about it, and I want to get a home that I can have a nice garden in. Like how in Palea I have the massive garden with all the flowers. I want a home that's like mostly focused on that. There's that. But yeah, this is AI, of course, but The Hobbit can be read on a live stream, but is generally restricted by copyright to official or charity-based performances. Actor Sandy Sarkis famously performed a continuous 12-hour live reading. I don't know how he did 12 hours of nonstop reading. Like, holy crap. In 2020 to raise money for charity. But yeah, generally reading copyrighted books like The Hobbit allowed for a general audience requires permission from the Tolkien estate. I can get away with it with, like, Dracula and stuff because they are well past the 100-year mark. But, and like Sherlock Holmes was it was like 150 years past. But I had to be really careful with stuff that I choose. And I'm like, I wanted to read it. Oh well. Let's see. I need to look up Imperial Library because we are going to be reading and fishings. You're so sweet, Chico. It would be super cool. Like, I'm not gonna lie. But, I might, like I said, I might just like pre-stream or 2 hours before we actually go live on Fridays. We swap over to, or we start on Discord, and I just read The Hobbit. I'm not completely like oblivious to my own limits. So my concern is I start reading that much and I'm gonna lose my voice before we hit like midnight. I've been really happy that we've been hitting midnight 1 o'clock for me to be tired. And I don't want to like push to limits. So, well, we'll figure things out. We always do. Let's see. Come on, books. All right. I'm just going to randomly start. I don't know if I'm going to randomly start reading or just start reading in a row. Oh, we can read The Dancing Fire. That was hilarious. Excuse me. Still got the hiccups. And I have found that these breath saver mints are like a lifesaver for me to help me like be able to read for longer because they keep me my vocal cords hydrated. So let's see. Saltwater fish, of course. I only have 33. Alrighty. A Dance in Fire. A Dance in Fire, Volume 1. Scene, the Imperial City, Cyrodiil. Date, 7th of Frostfall, 3rd Era, 397. It seemed as if the palace had always housed the Atreus Building Commission, the company of clerks and estate agents who authored and notarized nearly every construction of any node in the Empire. It had stood for 250 years, since the reign of the Emperor Magnus, plain-fronted and austere hall on a minor but respectable plaza in the Imperial City. Energetic and ambitious middle-class lads and ladies worked there, as well as complacent middle-aged ones like Decimus Scotti. No one could imagine a world without the Commission, least of all Scotti. To be accurate, he could not imagine a world without himself in the Commission. Lord Atreus is perfectly aware of your contributions, said the managing clerk, closing the shutter that demarcated Scotty's office behind him. But you know that things have been difficult. Yes, said Scotty stiffly. Lord Vennick's men have been giving us a lot of competition lately, and we must be more efficient if we are to survive. Unfortunately, that means releasing some of our historically best, but presently underachieving senior clerks. I understand. Can't be helped. I'm glad that you understand, smiled the managing clerk, smiling thinly and withdrawing. Please have your room cleared immediately. Scotty began the task of organizing all his work to pass on to his successor. It would probably be young Imbrius who would take most of it on, which was as it should be, he considered philosophically. The lad knew how to find business. Scotty wondered idly what the fellow would do with the contracts for the new statue of St. Alessia, for which the Temple of the One had applied. Probably invent a clerical error, blame it on his old predecessor, Decimus Scotty, and require an additional cost to rectify. I have correspondence for Decimus Scotty of the Atreus Building Commission. Scotty looked up. A fat-faced courier had entered his office and was thrusting forward a sealed scroll. Oh. Well, hello. I guess we're going to have to get rid of some stuff in my pockets. Need to sell you some stuff, bud. I've got lots of good stuff to sell. I don't want to sell that stuff. Why am I selling that stuff? Need to break that stuff down so we can get some
value appraisals.
Experience. Alrighty, back we go. He handed the boy a gold piece and opened it up. By the poor penmanship, atrocious spelling and grammar, and an overall unprofessional tone, it was manifestly evident who the writer was. Leotis Juris, a fellow clerk some years before, who had left the commission after being accused of unethical business practices. Dear Scotty, goodness. I imagine you always wondered what happened to me, and the last place you would have expected to find me is out in the woods. But that's exactly where I am, haha. If you're smart and want to make a lot of extra gold for Lord Atreus and yourself, haha, you'll come down to Valenwood too. If you haven't or have been following the politics here lately, you may or may not know that there's been a war among the Boschmer and their neighbors elsewhere over the past 2 years. Things have only just calmed down, and there's a lot that needs to be rebuilt. Now, I've got more business than I can handle, but I need someone with some clout, someone representing a respected agency to get the quill in the ink. That someone is you, my friend. I believe he said fiend on that one. Come and meet me at the Mother Pascos Tavern in Felinesti Valenwood. I'll be here 2 weeks, and you won't be sorry. Juris. P.S. Bring a wagon full of load of timber if you can. What have you got there, Scotty? Asked a voice. Scotty startled. It was Imbrius, his damnable handsome face peeking through the shutters, smiling in that way that melted the hearts of the stingiest of patrons and the roughest of stonemasons. Scotty shoved the letter into his jacket pocket. Personal correspondence, he sniffed. I'll be cleared up here in just a moment. I don't want to hurry you, said Imbrius, grabbing a few sheets of blank contracts from Scotty's desk. I've just gone through a stack, and the junior scribe's hands are all cramping up, so I thought you wouldn't miss a few. The lad vanished. Scotty retrieved the letter and read it again. He thought about his life, something he rarely did. It seemed a sea of gray with a black insurmountable wall looming. There was only one narrow passage he could see in that wall. Quickly, before he had a moment to reconsider, he grabbed a dozen of the blank contracts with a shimmering gold leaf, Atreus Building Commission by appointment of His Imperial Majesty, and hid them in the satchel with his personal effects. The next day he began his adventure with a giddy lack of hesitation. He arranged for a seat in a caravan bound for Valenwood, the single escorted conveyance to the southeast, leaving the Imperial City that week. He had scarcely hours to pack, but he remembered to purchase a wagon load of timber. It'll be extra gold to pay for a horse to pull that, frowned the convoy ahead. So I anticipated, smiled Scotty with his best Imbrius grin. 10 wagons in all set off that afternoon through the familiar Cyrodiila countryside, past fields of wildflowers, gently rolling woodlands, friendly hamlets. The clop of the horses' hooves against the sound stone road reminded Scotty that the Atreus Building Commission constructed it. 5 of the 18 necessary contracts for its completion were drafted by his own hand. Very smart of you to bring that wood along, said a grey-whiskered Breton man next to him on his wagon. You must be in commerce. Of a sort, said Scotty in a way he hoped was mysterious before introducing himself. Decimus Scotty. Griff Malone, said the man. I'm a poet, actually a translator of old Bosmer cult literature. I was researching some newly discovered tracks of the Menard Play Bar 2 years ago when the war broke out and I had to leave. You are no doubt familiar with the Menard if you are aware of the Green Pact. Scotty thought the man might be speaking perfect gibberish, but he nodded his head. Naturally, I don't pretend that the Menard is renowned as the Maldun, or as ancient as the Dancier Ghoul, but I think it has a remarkable significance to understanding the nature of the Merithic Bosmer mind, the origin of the Wood Elf aversion to cutting their own wood or eating any plant material at all, yet paradoxically, their willingness to import plant stuff from other cultures, I feel can be linked to the passage in the Menard. Malone shuffled through some of his papers, searching for the appropriate text. To Scotty's vast relief, the carriage soon stopped to a camp for the night. They were high on a bluff over a gray stream, and before them was the great valley of Valenwood. Only the cry of seabirds declared the presence of the ocean to the bay to the west. Here the timber was so tall and wide, twisting around itself like an impossible knot begun eons ago to be impenetrable. A few more modest trees, only 50 feet to the lowest branches, stood on the cliff at the edge of the camp. The sight was so alien to Scotty, and he found himself so anxious about the proposition of entering the wilderness that he could not imagine sleeping. Fortunately, Malone had supposed he had found another academic with a passion for the riddles of ancient cultures. Long into the night he recited Bosmer verse in the original and in his own translation, sobbing and bellowing and whispering wherever appropriate. Gradually, Scotty began to feel drowsy, but a sudden crack of wood snapping made him sit up straight. "What was that?" Malone smiled. "I like it too. Convocation in the malignity of the moonless speculum, a dance of fire." "There are some enormous birds up in the trees moving around," whispered Scotty, pointing in the direction of the dark shapes above. "I wouldn't worry about that," said Malone, irritated with his audience. "Now listen to how the poet characterizes Her Memora's invocation in the 18th stanza of the 4th book. The dark shapes in the trees were some of them perched like birds, others slithered like snakes, and still others stood up straight like men. As Malone recited his verse, Scotty watched the figures softly leap from branch to branch, half gliding across impossible distances for anything without wings. They gathered in groups and then reorganized until they had spread to every tree around the camp. Suddenly they plummeted from the heights. "Mara!" cried Scotty. "They're falling like rain." "Probably seed pods," Malone shrugged, not turning around. "Some of the trees have remarkable—" The camp erupted into chaos. Fires burst out in the wagons. The horses wailed from mortal blows. Casks of wine, fresh water, and liquor gushed their contents to the ground. A nimble shadow dashed past Scotty and Malone, gathering sacks of grain and gold with impossible agility and grace. Scotty had only one glance at it, lit by a sudden burst of flame. It was a sleek creature with pointed ears, wide yellow eyes, mottled pied fur, and a tail like a whip. "Werewolf," he whimpered, shrinking back. "Catharot," groaned Malone. "Much worse. Khajiit cousins or some such thing, come to plunder. Are you sure?" As quickly as they struck, the creatures retreated, diving off the bluff before the battle mage in night. The caravan's escorts had fully opened their eyes. Not Post Malone. Malone and Scotty ran to the precipice and saw 100 feet below the tiny figures dashed out of the water, shaking themselves and disappeared into the woods. "Werewolves aren't acrobats like that," said Malone. "They were definitely Cathay-Rot, bastard thieves. Thanks Stendar, they didn't realize the value of my notebooks. It was a complete loss." End of Volume 1. No, I was thinking that too, and I'm like, that's funny. But nope, just regular old Malone with a double L. Oh, here we go, another fishing hole, and a chest. And I'm gonna go grab that chest real quick. I highly doubt anybody's in this area, but still, I greedy. And I need to get another mint. My mint ran out about halfway through. Alrighty. That's a nice view right there. Ooh, we need a little bit of the sun if we want. Yeah. Okay. A little bit of drinky, a little bit of minty, and then we continue. You can see the dragon in the background. Top left, it's flying between the boats, ships. Okay, here we go. A Dance in Fire, Volume 2. It was a complete loss. The Cathay-Rot had stolen or destroyed almost every item of value in the caravan in just a few minutes' time. Decimus Scotty's wagon load of wood he had hoped to trade with the Bosmer had been set on fire and then toppled off the bluff. His clothing and contracts were tattered and ground into the mud of dirt mixed with spilt wine. All the pilgrims, merchants, and adventurers in the group moaned and wept as they gathered the remnants of their belongings by the rising of the dawn. "I best not tell anyone that I managed to hold on to my notes from my translation of the Monride Ply Bar," whispered the poet Griff Malone. "They'd probably turn on me." Scotty politely declined the opportunity of telling Malone just how little value he himself placed on the man's property. Instead, he counted the coins in his purse, 34 gold pieces. Very little indeed for an entrepreneur beginning a new business. "Hoy!" came a cry from the wood. A small party of Bosmer emerged from the thicket, clad in leather mail and bearing arms. "Friend or foe?" "Neither," growled the convoy head. "You must be the Cyrodiils," laughed the leader of the group, a tall, skeleton-thin youth with a sharp vulpine face. "We heard you were en route. Evidently so did our enemies." "I thought the war was over," muttered one of the caravan's now ruined merchants. The Bosmer laughed again. "No active war, just a little border enterprise. You are going on to Falinesti?" "I'm not," the convoy head shook his head. "As far as I'm concerned, my duty is done. No more horses, no more caravan, just a fat profit loss to me." The men and women crowded around the man, protesting, threatening, begging, but he refused to step foot in Valenwood. If these were the new times of peace, he said, he'd rather come back for the next war. Scotty tried a different route and approached the Bosmer. He spoke with an authoritative but friendly voice, the kind he used in negotiations with peevish carpenters. "I don't suppose you'd consider escorting me to Falinesti. I'm a representative for an important imperial agency, the Atreus Building Commission, here to help repair and alleviate some of the problems the war with the Khajiit brought to your province. Patriotism? 20 gold pieces, and you must carry your own gear if you have any left," replied the Bosmer. Scotty reflected that negotiations with peevish carpenters rarely went his way either. 6 eager people had enough gold on them for payment. Among those without funds was the poet, who appealed to Scotty for assistance. "I'm sorry, Griff, I only have 14 gold left over. Not even enough for a decent room when I get to Falinesti. I really would help you if I could," said Scotty, persuading himself that that was true. The band of 6 and their Bosmer escorts began the descent down a rocky path along the bluff. Within an hour's time, they were deep in the jungles of Valenwood. A never-ending canopy of hues of browns and greens obscured the sky. A millennia's worth of fallen leaves formed a deep, wormy sea of putrefaction beneath their feet. Several miles were crossed wading through the slime. For several more, they took a labyrinthian path across fallen branches and the low-hanging boughs of giant trees. All the while, hour after hour, the inexhaustible Bosmer host moved so fast the Cyrodiils struggled to keep them from being left behind. A red-faced little merchant with short legs took a bad step on a rotten branch and nearly fell. His fellow provincials had to help him up. The Bosmer paused only a moment, their eyes continually darting to the shadows in the trees above before moving on to their usual expeditious pace. "What are they so nervous about?" wheezed the merchant irritably. "More Cathay rot?" "Don't be ridiculous," laughed the Bosmer unconvincingly. "Khajiit this far into Valenwood, in times of peace? They'd never dare." When the group passed high enough above the swamp that the smell was somewhat dissipated, Scotty felt a sudden pang of hunger. He was used to 4 meals a day in the Cyrodiilic custom. Hours of non-stop exertion without food was not part of his regimen as a comfortably paid clerk. He pondered, feeling somewhat delirious, how long they had been trotting through the jungle. Sorry. You turned down my phone. 12 hours, 20, a week. Time was meaningless. Sunlight was only sporadic through the vegetative ceiling. Phosphorescent molds on the trees and in the muck below provided the only regular illumination. "Is it at all possible for us to rest and eat?" he hollered to his host up ahead. "We're near to Falinesti," came the echoing reply. "Lots of food there." The path continued upward for several hours, more across fallen logs, rising up to the first and then the second boughs of the tree line. As they rounded a long corner, the travelers found themselves midway up a waterfall that fell 100 feet or more. No one had the energy to complain as they began pulling up the stacks of rock, agonizing foot by foot. The Bosmer escorts disappeared into the mist, but Scotty kept climbing until there was no more rock left. He wiped the sweat and river water from his eyes. Falinesti spread across the horizon before him. Sprawling across both banks of the river stood the mighty Grot Oak City, with groves and orchards of lesser trees crowded in like supplicants before their king. At a lesser scale, the tree that formed the moving city would have been extraordinary, gnarled and twisted with a gorgeous crown of gold and green, dripping with vines and shining with sap. At a mile tall and half as wide, it was the most magnificent thing Scotty had ever seen. If he had not been a starving man with the soul of a clerk, he would have sung. "There you are," said the leader of the Squirts. "Not too far a walk. You should be glad it's wintertide. In summertide, the city's on the far south end of the province." Scotty was lost as to how to proceed. The sight of the vertical metropolis, where people moved about like ants, disoriented all his sensibilities. "You wouldn't know of an inn called—" He paused for a moment, and then pulled Juris's letter from his pocket. "Something like Mother Pasco's Tavern?" "Mother Pasco's?" The lead Bosmer laughed in his familiar contemptuous laugh. "You won't want to stay there. Visitors always prefer the Asia Hall in the top bows. It's expensive, but very nice. I'm meeting someone at Mother Pasco's Tavern. If you've made up your mind to go, take a lift to Havel Slump and ask for directions there. Just don't get lost and fall asleep in the Western Cross." This apparently struck the youth's friends as a very witty jest, and so it was, with their laughter echoing behind him, that Scotty crossed the writhing root system to the base of Felinesti. The ground was littered with leaves and refuse, and from moment to moment a glass or a bone would plummet from far above, so he walked with his neck crooked to have warning. An intricate network of platforms anchored to thick vines slipped up and down the slick trunk of the city, with perfect grace, manned by operators with arms as thick as an ox's belly. Scotty approaches the nearest fellow at one of the platforms, who was idly smoking from a glass pipe. "I was wondering if you might take me to Havel Slump." The Murr nodded, and within a few minutes' time, Scotty was 200 feet in the air at a crook between two mighty branches. Curled webs of moss stretched unevenly across the fork, forming a sharing roof for several dozen small buildings. There were only a few souls in the alley, but around the bend ahead he could hear the sound of music and people. Scotty tipped the Felinesti platform ferryman a gold piece and asked for the location of Mother Pasco's Tavern. "Straight ahead of you, sir, but you won't find anyone there," the ferryman explained, pointing in the direction of the noise. "Warned us everyone in Havel Slump has reverie." Scotty walked carefully along the narrow street, though the ground felt as solid as the marble venues of the Imperial City. There was a slick crack in the bark that exposed fatal drops into the river. He took a moment to sit down, to rest, and get used to the view from the heights. It was a beautiful day for certain, but it took Scotty only a few moments of contemplation to rise up in alarm. A jolly little raft anchored downstream below him had distinctly moved several inches while he watched it, but it hadn't moved at all. He had. Together with everything around him, it was no metaphor. The city of Felinesti walked, and considering its size, it moved quickly. Scotty rose to his feet and into a cloud of smoke that drifted out from and around the bend. It was the most delicious roast he had ever smelled. The clerk forgot his fear and ran. The revelry, as the ferryman had termed it, took place on an enormous platform tied to the tree, wide enough to be a plaza in any other city. A fantastic assortment of the most amazing people Scotty had ever seen were jammed shoulder to shoulder together, many eating, many more drinking, and some dancing to a lutist and singer perched on an offshoot above the crowd. They were largely Bosmer, true natives clad in colorful leather and bones, with a close minority of orcs. Whirling through the throng, dancing and bellowing at one another, were a hideous ape people. A few heads bobbed over the tops of the crowd belonged not, as Scotty first assumed, to very tall people, but to a family of centaurs. "Care for some mutton?" queried a wizened old Murr, who roasted an enormous beast on some red-hot rocks. Scotty quickly paid him a gold piece and devoured the leg he was given, and then another gold piece and another leg. The fellow chuckled when Scotty began choking on a piece of gristle, and handed him a mug of frothing white drink. He drank it, and felt a quiver run through his body as if he were being tickled. "What is that?" Scotty asked. "Jaga, fermented pig's milk. I can let you have a flagon of it and a bit more mutton for another gold." Scotty agreed, paid, gobbled down the meat, and took the flagon with him as he slipped into the crowd. His co-worker, Lyotis Juris, the man who had told him to come to Valenwood, was nowhere to be seen. When the flagon was a quarter empty, Scotty stopped looking for Juris. When it was half empty, he was dancing with the group, oblivious to the broken planks and gaps in the fencework. At 3/4 empty, he was trading jokes with a group of creatures whose language was completely alien to him. By the time the flagon was completely drained, he was asleep, snoring, while the revelry continued on all around his supine body. The next morning, still asleep, Scotty had the sensation of someone kissing him. He made a face to return the favor, but a pain like fire spread through his chest and forced him to open his eyes. There was an insect the size of a large calf sitting on him, crushing him, its spiky legs holding him down, while a central, spiral-bladed vortex of a mouth tore through his shirt. He screamed and thrashed, but the beast was too strong. It had found its meal, and it was going to finish it. It's over, thought Scotty wildly. I should have never left home. I could have stayed in the city and perhaps found work with Lord Vennick. I could have begun again as a junior clerk and worked my way up. Suddenly the mouth released itself. The creature shivered once, expelled a burst of yellow bile, and died. Got one, cried a voice not too distantly. For a moment Scotty lay still. His head throbbed and his chest burned. Out of the corner of his eye he saw movement. Another of the horrible monsters was scurried towards him. He scrambled, trying to push himself free, but before he could come out there was a sound of a bow cracking, and an arrow pierced the second insect. Good shot, cried another voice. Get the first one again. I just saw it move a little. This time Scotty felt the impact of the bolt hitting the carcass. He cried out, but he could hear how muffled his voice was by the beetle's body. Cautiously, he tried sliding a foot out and rolling under, but the movement apparently had the effect of convincing the archers that the creature still lived. A volley of arrows was launched forth. Now the beast was sufficiently perforated so pools of its blood, and likely the blood of its victims, began to seep onto Scotty's body. Oh, 1 second. Sorry, I'm about to cough really hard. Oh, sorry. That's what happens when I go for too long without a little bit of water. Okay. When Scotty was a lad, before he grew too sophisticated for such sports, he had often gone to the imperial arena for the competitions of war. He recalled a great veteran of the fights when asked, telling him his secret. Whenever I'm in doubt of what to do and I have a shield, I stay behind it. Scotty followed that advice. After an hour, when he no longer heard arrows being fired, he threw aside the remnants of the bug and leapt as quickly as he could to a stand. It was not a moment too soon. A gang of 8 archers had their bows pointed in his direction, ready to fire. When they saw him, they laughed. Didn't anyone ever tell you not to sleep in the Western Cross? How are we going to exterminate all the Horvers if you're drunk keep feeding them? Scotty shook his head and walked back along the platform, round the bend to Hovel's slump. He was bloodied and torn and tired, and he had far too much fermented pig's milk. All he wanted was a proper place to lie down. He stepped into Mother Pescot's tavern, a dank place wet with sap, smelling of mildew. My name is Decimus Scotty, he said. I was hoping you have someone named Juris staying here. Decimus Scotty, pondered the fleshy proprietess Mother Pescot herself. I've heard that name. Oh, you must be the fellow he left the note for. Let me go see if I can find it. End of Volume 2. So we're going to find ourselves another fishing hole. Which I don't think is... Yep, it's not that far. It's right here. That's not too bad. Oh, I'm getting eaten by something. What in the world? Those guys are not usually so close to the water. That's crazy. Okay. Those are those, man-eating fish things. Where is my chapstick? Oh no, I lost it in my chapstick. Oh, I have another chapstick. Desk chapstick. Post-it note chapstick. Decoration chapstick. Alright, let's see. And another sip of water and another mint. Alrighty. A Dance and Fire, Volume 3. Mother Pescos disappeared into the sordid hole that was her tavern, and emerged a moment later with a scrap of paper with the Otis Juris familiar scrawl. Decimus Scotty held it up before a patch of sunlight that had found its way through the massive boughs of the tree city, and read, Scotty, so you made it to Falinesti, Valenwood. Congratulations. I'm sure you had quite an adventure getting here. Unfortunately, I am not here anymore, as you probably guessed. There's a town downriver called Athe I'm at. Get a boat and join me. It's ideal. I hope you brought a lot of contracts, because these people need a lot of building done. They were close to the war, you see, but not so close they don't have any money left to pay. Haha. Meet me down here as soon as you can. Juris. So Scotty pondered. Juris had left Falinesti and gone to some place called Athe. Given his poor penmanship and ghastly spelling, it could equally be Athe, Athe, Othre, Imthril, Urthra, or Kirmkagnak. The sensible thing to do, Scotty knew, was to call this adventure over and try to find some way to get back home to the Imperial City. He was no mercenary devoted to a life of thrills. He was, or at least had been, a senior clerk at a successful private building commission. Over the last few weeks he had been robbed by the Cathay Rot, taken on a death march through the jungle by a gang of giggling Bosmiri, half-starved to death, drugged with fermented pig's milk, nearly slain by some kind of giant tick, and attacked by archers. He was filthy, exhausted, and had, he counted, 10 gold pieces to his name. Now the man whose proposal brought him to the depths of mystery was not even there. He was both judicious and seemingly to abandon the enterprise entirely. And yet, a small but distinct voice in his head told him, "You have been chosen. You have no other choice but to see this through." Oh, I need more bait. Scotty turned to the stout old woman, Mother Pascast, who had been watching him curiously. I was wondering if you knew of a village that was at the edge of the recent conflict with Elsewire. It's called something like Athe? Oh, you must mean Athe, she grinned. My middle lad, Vigil. He manages a dairy down there. Beautiful country, right on the river. Is that where your friend went? Yes, said Scotty. Do you know the fastest way to get there? After a short conversation, an even shorter ride to Felinesti's roots by way of the platforms, and a jog to the riverbank, Scotty was negotiating transport with a huge, fair-haired Bosmer, with a face like a pickled carp. He called himself Captain Balfix, but even Scotty, with his sheltered life, could recognize him for what he was: a retired pirate for hire, a smuggler for certain, and probably much worse. His ship, which had clearly been stolen in the distant past, was a bent old Imperial sloop. 50 gold, and we'll be in Athe in 2 days' time, boomed Captain Balfax expansively. I have 10. No, sorry, 9 pieces of gold, replied Scotty, and feeling the need for explanation, added, I had 10, but I had to give one to the platform ferryman to get me down here. 9 is just as fine, said the captain agreeably. Truth be told, I was going to Athe whether you paid me or not. Make yourself comfortable on the boat. We'll be leaving in just a few minutes. Decimus Scotty boarded the vessel, which was sat low in the water of the river, stacked high with crates and sacks that spilled out of the hold, galleon onto the deck. Each was marked with stamps advertising the most innocuous substances: copper scraps, lard, ink, high rock meal, marked for cattle, tar, fish jelly. Scotty's imagination reeled, picturing what sorts of illicit imports were truly aboard. It took more than those few minutes for Captain Balfax to haul in the rest of his cargo, but in an hour the anchor was up and they were sailing down river towards Athe. The green-gray water barely rippled, only touched by the fingers of the breeze. Lush plant life crowded the banks, obscuring from sight all the animals that sang and roared at one another. Lulled by the serene surroundings, Scotty drifted to sleep. At night he awoke and gratefully accepted some clean clothes and food from Captain Balfix. Why are you going to Athe, if I may ask? Queried the Bosmer. I'm meeting a former colleague there. He asked me to come down from the Imperial City where I worked for the Atreus Building Commission to negotiate some contracts. Scotty took another bite of the dried sausages they were sharing for dinner. We're going to try to repair and refurbish whatever bridges, roads, and other structures that got damaged in the recent war with the Khajiit. It's been a hard 2 years, the captain nodded his head, though I suppose good for me and the likes of you and your friend. Trade routes cut off. Now they think there's going to be a war with Somerset Isles. You heard that? Scotty shook his head. I have done my share of smuggling skooma down the coast, even helped some revolutionary types escape the Maine's wrath. But now the wars have made me a legitimate trader, a businessman. The first casualties of war is always the corrupted. Scotty said he was sorry to hear that, and they lapsed into silence, watching the stars and moons reflect on the still water. The next day, Scotty awoke to find the captain wrapped up in his sail, torpid from alcohol, singing in a low, slurred voice. When he saw Scotty rise, he offered his flagon of jaga. I learned my lesson during the revelry at Western Cross. The captain laughed and then burst into tears. I don't want to be legitimate. Other pirates I used to know are still raping and stealing and smuggling and selling nice folks like you into slavery. I swear to you, I never thought the first time that I ran a real shipment of legal goods that my life would turn out like this. Oh, I know, I could go back to it, but Bondar knows not after all I've seen. I'm a ruined man. Scotty helped the weeping Mur out of the sail, murmuring words of assurance. Then he added, "Forgive me for changing the subject, but where are we?" "Oh," moaned Captain Balifax miserably, "we made good time. Athray's right around the bend in the river." "Then it looks like Athay's on fire," said Scotty, pointing. A great clump of smoke black as pitch was rising above the trees. As they drifted round the bend, they next saw the flames, and then the blackened skeletal remains of the village. Dying, blazing villagers leapt from rocks into the river. A cacophony of wailing met their ears, and they could see, roaming along the edges of the town, the figures of Khajiiti soldiers bearing torches. "Bondar bless me," slurred the captain, "the war's back on." "Oh no," whimpered Scotty. The sloop drifted with the current towards the opposite shore, away from the fiery town. Scotty turned his attention there, and the sanctuary it offered, just a peaceful arbor, away from the horror. There was a shudder of leaves in 2 of the trees, and a dozen lithe Khajiit dropped to the ground, armed with bows. "They see us," hissed Scotty, "and they've got bows." "Of course they have bows," snarled Captain Balfix. "We Bosmer may have invented the bloody things, but we didn't think to keep them secret, you bloody bureaucrat." "Now they're sitting there, arrows on fire." "Yes, they do that sometimes. Captain, they're shooting at us. They're shooting at us with flaming arrows." "Aye, so they are," the captain agreed. "The aim here is to avoid being hit." But hit they were, and very shortly thereafter. Even worse, the second volley of arrows hit the supply of pitch, which ignited in a tremendous blue blaze. Scotty grabbed Captain Balfex, and they leapt overboard just before the ship and all its cargo disintegrated. The shock of the cold water brought the Bosmer into temporary sobriety. He called to Scotty, who was already swimming as fast as he could toward the bend. "Master Decimus, where do you think you are swimming to?" "Back to Felinesti," cried Scotty. "It will take you days, and by the time you get there, everyone will know about the attack on Athay. They'll never let anyone they don't know in. The closest village downriver is Grenos. Maybe they'll give us shelter." Scotty swam back to the captain, and side by side they began paddling into the middle of the river. Past the burning residuum of the village, he thanked Mara that he had learned to swim. Many a Cyrodiil did not, as largely landlocked as the imperial province was. Had he been raised in Merkarup or Ardaman, he might have been doomed, but the imperial city itself was encircled by water, and every lad and lass there knew how to cross without a boat, even those who grew up to be clerks and not adventurers. Captain Balfex's sobriety faded as he grew used to the water's temperature. Even in wintertide, the Xylo River was fairly temperate and, after a fashion, even comfortable. The Bosmer's strokes were uneven, and he'd stray closer to Scotty than farther away, pushing ahead and then falling behind. Scotty looked to the shore to his right. The flames had caught the trees like tinder. Excuse me. Behind them was an inferno, with which they were barely keeping pace. To the shore on their left all looked fair until he saw a tremble in the river reeds, and then what caused it? A pride of the largest cats he had ever seen. They were auburn-haired, green-eyed beasts with jaws and teeth to match his wildest nightmares, and they were watching the 2 swimmers and keeping pace. "Captain Balfax, we can't go either that shore or the other one, or we'll be parboiled and eaten," Scotty whispered. "Try to even your kicking and your strokes. Breathe like you would normally. If you're feeling tired, tell me, and we'll float on our backs for a while." Anyone who has had the experience of giving rational advice to a drunkard would understand the hopelessness. Scotty kept pace with the captain, slowing himself, quickening, drifting left and right, while the Bosmer moaned like old ditties from his pirate days. When he wasn't watching his companion, he watched the cats on the shore. After a stretch, he turned to his right. Another village had caught fire. Undoubtedly, it was Grenos. Scotty stared at the blazing fury, awed by the sight of the destruction, and did not hear that the captain had ceased to sing. When he turned back, Captain Balfex was gone. Scotty dove into the murky depths of the river over and over again. There was nothing to be done. When he surfaced after his final stretch, he saw that the giant cats had moved on, presuming that he too had drowned. He continued his lonely swim downriver. A tributary, he noted, had formed a final barrier, keeping the flames from spreading further, but there were no more towns. After several hours, he began to ponder the wisdom of going ashore. Which shore was the question? He was spared the decision. Ahead of him was a rocky island with a bonfire. He did not know if he were intruding on a party of Bosmiri or Khajiiti, only that he could swim no more. With straining, aching muscles, he pulled himself onto the rocks. They were Bosmer refugees, he gathered, even before they told him. Roasting over the fire were the remains of one of the giant cats that had been stalking him through the jungle on the opposite shore. Sensei tiger, said one of the young warriors ravenously. It's no animal. It's as smart as any Cathay Rot or Ohms or any other bleeding Khajiiti. Pity this one drowned. I would have gladly killed it. You like the meat, though, sweet from all the sugar these asses eat. Scotty did not know if he was capable of eating a creature as intelligent as a man or Mur, but he surprised himself, as he had done several times over the last days. It was rich, succulent, and sweet, like sugared pork, but no seasonings had been added. He surveyed the crowd as he ate, a sad lot, some still weeping for lost family members. They were the survivors of both the villages of Grenos and Athay, and war was on every person's lips. Why had the Khajiiti attacked again? Why, specifically targeted at Scotty, as a Cyrodiil, why was the Emperor not enforcing peace in his provinces? I was to meet another Cyrodiil, he said to a boss mermaiden, who he understood to be from Athay. His name was Lyodis Juris. I don't suppose you know what might have happened to him. I don't know your friend, but there are many Cyrodiils in Athay when the friar came, said the thrall. Some of them, I think, left quickly. They were going to Vindisi inland in the jungle. I'm going there tomorrow. So are many of us. If you wish, you may come as well. Decimus Scotty nodded solemnly. He made himself as comfortable as he could in the stony ground of the river island, and somehow, after much effort, he fell asleep. But he did not sleep well. And that is the end of Volume 3. Okay. So let's find another fishing hole, which is over here. Oh, hey. Can I stand here, or are you going to start eating my toes again? Okay, cool. I need to make a few setting changes here. Okay, and then I need to do this. There we go. Had to make some adjustments to my stuff. And I need to stretch. That was so funny. That, their conversation right before they got thrown off their ship. That was great. I think we only have 2 more volumes of A Dance in Fire, or do we have... Is it 5 volumes or 7? Well, we'll probably end up finishing it before the end of the stream tonight. Tonight. Man, I'm so used to streaming at night. Alright. What does this button do? Yeah. Probably gonna have to go pick up some more bait, though, because we are very low on the bait. A Dance in Fire, Volume 4. Oh, I do need more bait. I'm all out. Oh, okay. Well, where are we? I'm gonna mark that here. I want to see if this one's for sale. I think it is, and if it is, I need to see how much it is to buy it, because Lucky Cat's one of my favorite houses. I just love it. It's so beautiful. It's so pretty. It has such a nice view. But we'll take a look, and then I'll go and pick up some more bait from the, oh, do I have money on this character? Made my life so difficult. See, isn't that view beautiful? I mean, I know you've seen like a lot of the burned parts of the city, but still. It's so pretty. The inside's gorgeous too. Okay, let's see. 4,400, and it's not in gold. Every so often, well, it used to go for sale, excuse me, with gold, for gold. I just have to remember to keep some money handy. I think it was like 1 million gold? I don't know. It is one of my favorite houses, though. But I need to find a house that I can turn into, have a nice large garden. Okay, property steward. Do I have any money inside you? Probably not. Withdraw currency? Ooh. I don't have any gold. Bookers. Oh, hey, you need to go bye-bye. I might have to swap characters and see. Because if I remember correctly, saltwater bait is really freaking expensive in the guild stores. Ooh, I like your dress. So if it is, I'm gonna have to go, and I might have to character hop, which is not fun at all.
Behold, this one's
Story time! What am I doing? I just need to go. Miscellaneous. Lure. Yeah? No, not lure. Count? No, it doesn't count. It's a tool. Ooh, what is this? A Xander gives you tea. Is it a decoration? I can't. Oh my gosh. That's not what that's supposed to be. Oh well. I'll figure it out. I'll probably end up going look for some. Let me see, how do I click? Okay. And here we're just gonna put bait. Nope, no bait. If not, we could always change to fishing somewhere else, but I really like fishing on the ocean.
greetings.
Man. Yeah, we might have to switch to fishing somewhere else.
Only the
Bath time! I like these guild names. These are some nice guild names. Riverbait. Okay, so we're gonna go to Vardenfell. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna start dumping all my money. Hey, shenanigans! Oh, hey, Nordens! I'm doing good. How are you?
Add a word.
Okay, deposit. Okay. I'm gonna log out. I need to just start earning more gold. Boo. I actually started using the, what do they call it? The add-ons that you can use for, and see, I might have already done this before, so they might all be poor. The add-ons for PlayStation, it's so nice for crafting. Holy smokes, it goes so fast. I got so many Jubilee boxes so quickly. Let's see. No, I don't want to do you right now. Let's see, what do I have? You have nothing on you. I knew it. Oh. We might have to go and take to actually going to pick up stuff for saltwater fish. I mean, it's not horrible. It's just going to be a little bit different than what I planned for today. Now, if we were on my PlayStation account, I have like several thousand saltwater bait, so we would be forever. Alright, let's see. Oh, I got some gold on me. Let's see if it's enough. Well, hey. Hi, person. Do you and your wonderful guild carry bait? I would much appreciate if you did. Saltwater bait. Ooh, perfect. I love you. You're a beautiful Argonian. Alright. It's actually one of the better pricings I've seen for saltwater bait before, because it was really freaking expensive before. It was very expensive. Oh, well, when I'm reading and stuff like that or caught up, you know how I get. I get so distracted. Do not poop on the artist. I'm just gonna have to wander away because I don't want him to accidentally poop on the artist. Where was I? Oh, I thought I marked it. Did I not mark it? Oh yeah, because I swapped characters. Boogers. Oh well. Go this way. Which is this way. There's some really interesting decorations in here that I need to get for my house and for the Tamriel tome. Is it tomes? Or not the tomes, it is Gold Coast Bazaar. There's some really nice decorations I need to get. There's a lot of statuettes, which is great. Hi, Nortons. Let's see. Where is this? There's like these glowing statues that I need. Oh well, we'll find them later. I still have to earn the points, and I have not done that yet. Whee! So look at that.
Did you hear? Some robed strangers just chartered a ship.
Mighty mysterious. Alright, here we go. Oh, that fishing hole came back alive. Let's go. Alrighty, don't have to go that far. I do have to open up my mail, though. There we go. That'll last us for a little bit. Maybe not as long as I'd like, but still. Peppermint. A little bit of water. I'm ready to continue. Alright. A Dance in Fire, Volume 4. 18 Bosmiri and 1 Cyrodiilic former senior clerk for an Imperial Building Commission trudged through the jungle westward from the Xylo River to the ancient village of Vindisi. For Decimus Scotti, this jungle was hostile and familiar ground. The enormous vermiculated trees filled the bright morning with darkness and resembled nothing so much as grasping claws bent on impeding their progress. Even the fronds of the low plants quivered with malevolent energy. What was worse, he was not alone in his anxiety. His fellow travelers, the natives who had survived the Khajiit attacks on the villages of Grenos and Athay, wore faces of undisguised fear. There was something sentient in the jungle, and not merely the mad, but benevolent indigenous spirits. In his peripheral vision, Scotti could see the shadows of the Khajiit following the refugees leaping from tree to tree. When he turned to face them, the lithe forms vanished into the gloom as if they had never been there, but he knew he had seen them, and the Bosmiri saw them too, and quickened their pace. After 18 hours, bitten raw by insects, scratched by 1,000 thorns, they emerged into a valley of clearing. It was night, but a row of blazing torches greeted them, illuminating the leather-wrought tents and jumbled stones of the hamlet of Vindisi. At the end of the valley, the torches marked a sacred site, a gnarled bower of trees pressed close together to form a temple. Wordlessly, the Bosmiri walked the torch arcade toward the trees. Scotti followed them. When they reached the solid mass of living wood with only one gaping portal, Scotti could see a dim blue light glowing within. A low, sonorous moan from 100 voices echoed within. The Bosmiri maiden he had been following held out her hand, stopping him. "You do not understand, but no outsider, not even a friend, may enter," she said. "This is a holy place." Jax! Hi, Jax! We're reading A Dance in Fire. We're on Volume 4. Scotti nodded and watched the refugees march into the temple, heads bowed, their voices joined with the ones within. When the last wood elf had gone inside, Scotti turned his attention back to the village. There must be food to be had somewhere. A tendril of smoke and a faint whiff of roasting venison beyond the torchlight led him. There were 5 Cyrodiils, 2 Bretons, and a Nord. The group gathered around a campfire of glowing white stones, pulling steaming strips of meat from the cadaver of a great stag. At Scotty's approach, they rose up, but all the Nords who was distracted by his hunk of animal flesh. Good evening. Sorry to interrupt, but I was wondering if I might have a little something to eat. I'm afraid I'm rather hungry after walking all day with some refugees from Grenos and Athay. They bade him to sit down and eat and introduce themselves. So the war's back on, it seems, said Scotty amiably. Best thing for these do-nothings, replied the Nord in between bites. I've never seen such a lazy culture. Now they've got the Khajiit striking them on land and the High Elves at sea. If there is any province that deserves a little distress, it's damnable Valenwood. Oh, like you jerkface. This is southern Elsewhere. That's where these ships are. I don't see how they're so offensive to you, laughed one of the Bretons. They're congenital thieves. Even worse than the Khajiit, because they're so blessed meek in their aggression. The Nords spat out a gob of fat which sizzled on the hot stones of the fire. They spread their forests into territory that don't belong to them, slowly infiltrating their neighbors, and they're puzzled when Elsewhere shoves back at them. They're all villains of the worst order. What are you doing here? Asked Scotty. I'm a diplomat from the court of Gehenna, muttered the Nord, returning to his food. What about you? What are you doing here? Asked one of the Cyrodiils. I work for Lord Atreus' building commission in the Imperial City, said Scotty. One of my former colleagues suggested that I come down to Valenwood. He said the war was over and I could contract a great deal of business for my firm rebuilding what was lost. One disaster after another, and I've lost all my money. I'm in the middle of a rekindling of war, and I cannot find my former colleague. Your former colleague, murmured one of the Cyrodiils, who had introduced himself as Regulus. He wasn't by any chance named Leotis Juris, was he? You know him? He lured me down to Valenwood in nearly the exact same circumstances, smiled Regulus grimly. I worked for your employer's competitor, Lord Vennick's men, where Leotis Juris also formerly worked. He wrote to me asking that I represent an Imperial building commission and contract some post-war construction. I had just been released from my employment and thought that if I brought some new business, I could have my job back. Juris and I met in Athay, and he said he was going to arrange a very lucrative meeting with a Sylvanar. Scotty was stunned. Where is he now? I'm no theologian, so I couldn't say, Regulus shrugged. He's dead. When the Khajiit attacked Athay, they began by torching the harbor where Juris was readying his boat. Or so I should say my boat, since it was purchased with the gold I brought. By the time we were even aware of what was happening enough to flee, everything by the water was ash. The Khajiit may be animals, but they know how to arrange an attack. Nice. So do you have a calculation on how many pieces you need? I think they followed us through the jungle to Vendesi, said Scotty nervously. There was definitely a group of something jumping along the treetops. Probably one of the monkey folks, snorted the Nord. Nothing to be concerned about. When we first came to Vendisi and the Bosmeri all entered the tree, they were furious, whispering something about unleashing an ancient terror on their enemies, the Breton shivered, remembering. They've been there ever since for over a day and a half now. If you want something to be afraid of, that's the direction to look. The other Breton, who was a representative of the Daggerfall Mages Guild, was staring off into the darkness while his fellow provincial spoke. Maybe, but there's something in the jungle too, right on the edge of the village, looking in. More refugees, maybe, asked Scotty, trying to keep the alarm out of his voice. Not unless they're traveling through the trees now, whispered the wizard. The Nord and one of the Cyrodiils grabbed a large tarp of wet leather and pulled it across the fire, instantly extinguishing it without so much as a sizzle. Now Scotty could see the intruders, the elliptical yellow eyes and long, cruel blades catching the torchlight. He froze with fear, praying that he, too, was not so visible to them. He felt something bump against his back and gasped. Regulus's voice hissed from up above. Be quiet for Mara's sake and climb up here. Scotty grabbed hold of the knotted double vine that hung down from a tall tree at the edge of the dead campfire. He scrambled up it as quickly as he could, holding his breath lest any grunt of exertion escape him. At the top of the vine, high above the village, was an abandoned nest with some great bird in a trident-shaped branch. As soon as Scotty had pulled himself into the soft, fragrant straw, Regulus pulled up the vine. No one else was there, and when Scotty looked down, he could see no one below. No one, that is, except the Khajiit, slowly moving toward the glowing of the temple tree. Thank you, Scotty, whispered Scotty, deeply touched that the competitor had helped him. He turned away from the village and saw that the tree's upper branches brushed against the mossy rock walls that surrounded the valley below. How are you at climbing? You're mad, said Regulus under his breath. We should stay here until they leave. If they burn Vendesi like they did Athay and Grenos, we'll be dead sure as if we were on the ground. Scotty began the slow, careful climb up the tree, testing each branch. Can you see what they're doing? Why was my video all the way at the beginning of your stream? I have no idea, Nortons. I am very, very new to YouTube streaming. I have no idea why it would have been that way. Let's see. And I need another peppermint, so give me 1 second. We'll continue volume 2 after a peppermint, a sip of water, and another watering hole. Fishing hole, my bad. But yeah, I have no idea. I'm not really, like... I'm still working out the whys and wherefores of YouTube streaming, but I haven't been able to find very many, like, videos that explain anything. Everybody talks about Twitch streaming. I like that too. Okay. I can't really tell, Regulus stared down into the gloom. They're at the front of the temple. I think they also have it looks like long ropes, trailing off behind them, off into the pass. Scotty crawled onto the strongest branch that pointed toward the wet, rocky face of the cliff. It was not a far jump at all, so close, in fact, that he could smell the moisture and feel the coolness of the stone, but it was a jump nevertheless, and in his history as a clerk he had never before leapt from a tree 100 feet off the ground to a sheer rock. He pictured in his mind's eye the shadows that had pursued him through the jungle from the heights above, how their legs coiled to spring, how their arms snapped forward in an elegant fluid motion to grasp. He leapt. I try not missing messages. Because I thought I was near here, and I'm just tired helping a neighbor load up a trick. Huh? It's okay, you just gotta poke fun somehow. I do try not to miss, but whenever I'm reading, like, I get really focused in on reading. His hands grappled for rock, but long, thick cords of moss were more accessible. He held hard, but when he tried to plant his feet forward, they slipped up skyward. For a few seconds, he found himself upside down before he managed to pull himself into a more conventional position. There was a narrow outcropping jutting out of the cliff where he could stand and finally exhale. Regulus, 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 Scotty did not dare to call out. In a minute, there was a shrieking of branches, and Lord Vennick's men emerged. First his satchel, then his head, then the rest of him. Scotty started to whisper something, but Regulus shook his head violently and pointed downward. One of the Khajiit was at the base of the tree, peering at the remains of the campfire. Regulus awkwardly tried to balance himself on the branch, but as strong as it was exceedingly difficult with only one free hand. Scotty cupped his palms and then pointed at the satchel. It seemed to pain Regulus to let it out of his grasp, but he relented and tossed it to Scotty. There was a small, almost invisible hole in the bag, and when Scotty caught it, a single gold coin dropped out. It rang as it bounced against the rock wall on the descent, a high, soft sound that seemed like the loudest alarm Scotty had ever heard. Then many things happened very quickly. The Cathay Rot at the base of the tree looked up and gave a loud wail. The other Khajiit followed in chorus as the cat below crouched down and then sprung up into the lower branches. Regulus saw it below him, climbing up with impossible dexterity, and panicked. Even before he jumped, Scotty could tell that he was going to fall. With a cry, Regulus the clerk plunged to the ground, breaking his neck on impact. I don't see a response about the ceiling, Jax. When I look, I see, by the way, the whole first floor of the wall is done now. I just need ceiling or floor. And then your very next message, because there's no message between that, is I still see you miss messages, though. I don't see any numbers. Yeah, it's just not there. Let's see. A flash of white fire erupted from every crevice of the temple, and the moan of the Bosmeri praying changed into something terrible and otherworldly. The climbing Cathay Rot stopped and stared. Kiargo, it gasped, the wild hunt. It was as if a crack in reality had opened wide. A flood of horrific beasts, tentacled toads, insects of armor and spine, gelatinous serpents, vaporous beings with the face of gods, all poured forth from the great hollow tree, blind with fury. They tore the Khajiit in front of the temple to pieces. All the other cats fled for the jungle, but as they did so, they began pulling on the ropes they carried. In a few seconds' time, the entire village of Indisi was boiling with the lunatic apparitions of the wild hunt. Over the babbling, barking, howling horde, Skadi heard the Cyrodiils in hiding cry out as they were devoured. The Nords too were found and eaten, and both Bretons. The wizard had turned himself invisible, but the swarm did not rely on their sight. The tree in the Cathay Rot was in began to sway and rock from the impossible violence beneath it. Skadi looked at the Khajiit's fear-stricken eyes and held out one of the cords of moss. The cat's face showed its pitiful gratitude as it leapt for the vine. It didn't have time to entirely replace that expression when Skadi pulled back the cord and watched it fall. The hunt consumed it to the bone before it struck the ground. Skadi's own jump up to the next outcropping of rock was immeasurably more successful. From there, he pulled himself to the top of the cliff and was able to look down into the chaos that had been the village of Indisi. The hunt's mass had grown and began to spill out through the pass out of the valley, pursuing the fleeing Khajiit. It was then that the madness truly began. In the moon's light from Scott's vantage, he could see where the Khajiit had attached their ropes. With a thunderous boom, an avalanche of boulders poured over the pass. When the dust cleared, he saw that the hunt had been sealed. The wild hunt had nowhere to turn to but on itself. Skadi turned his head, unable to bear the look of the cannibalistic orgy. The night jungle stood before him, a web of wood. He slung Regulus's satchel over his shoulder and entered. End of Volume 4. Yeah, I don't know. Norns, I don't know what's going on. I must be missing messages or something, because I'm not seeing everything. Which is odd. I'm taking a stretch, sorry. I think, if I'm not mistaken, we have Volume 5, Volume 6, and Volume 7 left. Let's see. I'm gonna open up a... Oops, my bad. I'm gonna open up a second window and see, maybe, if I can see my own... Let's see. Not that. Can I see my own video? I used to before. La 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 la. Let me see. No. I'm not seeing it at all. I even went to go look at the video, like, to view it as if I was viewing it with y'all. I don't know how to fix that either. Maybe it says top chat. What about just live chat? Ah, okay, I see. Oh, I see what happened. I know how to fix it. So for some reason, I have it listed as top chat, and I need to move it to live chat because it's only showing the like the, I don't know, it's ranking the comments. Okay. And I want of each to see which I like better and see the size. Okay, so I'm gonna need your help because I have not been getting a lot of those sprockets. I think I might have 1 or 2 sprockets, so I might be able to send you the floor and the ceiling that I have available. But then I can't make anything else. Yeah, so whenever I have it set, and it's like, I guess it's preset to top chat, and I have to click on it and change it to live chat, and it adjusts. Did not know that. Learned something new. Let's see. I am going to drink a little bit. I'm almost out of mints. No, I have a whole bag right here. I think if I ever did one of those little, you know, where you can buy stuff, like I can ask if you can get me something, I'd do mints. Because I go through mints. I go through an entire thing of mints in a stream. But it helps me to be able to talk longer, so I mean, it's worth it. Alright, let's see. I haven't been on in a couple of days because I had to do my taxes. But, like, I completely understand. Oh, tomorrow is my anniversary. I will still be streaming because I'm pretty sure, unless Phil decides to take the day off, which I don't think he has the option of it, I'll still stream. But just letting you know. I don't think we're doing anything special for Friday unless he decides to surprise me. So, we should have just a regular schedule. But yeah, no. And then, so I wasn't able to go to my mom's this weekend because the weather was supposed to be horrific. And then I started just getting, I felt so sick. I felt so bad all like Sunday afternoon till like yesterday morning. Oh man, I had such a hard time sleeping. I told you y'all I broke that tooth and they won't see me until I can get my blood pressure checked out by a doctor, right? Well, it wasn't hurting until just recently and like the pain was something else. Like, oh, it's finally stopped. But and I did get a doctor's appointment, but it's not for a while yet, so boo. But I think part of why my blood pressure was so high is I started taking ginseng, and apparently ginseng can raise your blood pressure. So Sunday, yeah, I should be still on for Sunday. I don't see any reason why we should have anything different this week. If I let me check out the weather just in case. Yeah, we have like a low chance of rain on Sunday, but nothing too bad. The bad stuff is on Monday and on Saturday. So hey, and Friday looks pretty clear too so far. Yeah. I was trying to do the dailies and stuff, and it's just like, yeah, it, it just hasn't been able to sync up with my schedule. Alright, I'm gonna get another sip of water. And why is it swapped? Okay. Oh, I thought it swapped back, but it didn't. Alrighty. Let me get me set back up. Oh. And, oh, I gotta find a fishing hole. Of course I do. I need to start finding the fishing holes that are in rivers and stuff, because I probably have... Oh, there's the dragon. Pretty pretty. Yeah. I did some, and then especially with Jubilee going on, everybody was hunting the Harrow Storms. So I was able to do a lot of those the Harrow Storms. But even then, like, I didn't get very much. I want that Thieves' Trove, Mr. Hajmoda, Mrs. Hosmoja. And you're just gonna have to live without it. Cool. But yeah, I was able to do more than usual. But even then, like, the drops for it were not very... It was not a very common drop. And then, like, I'm trying to funnel all of the armor over to my crafter because she has a higher chance of getting rare materials when she breaks stuff down. So I just haven't had a chance to hop onto her. Like, the more things I have for her to deconstruct, the higher the chances that she'll actually deconstruct a sprocket for us. So it's all very myth-math yuckies. I just want to play video games. Just kidding. I may need your help looking for a house, though, because another house. I decided that I want to make a house in ESO that's like my little garden house, and I'm gonna get a bunch of flowers and trees. Like the house itself is not super important, but I need to have lots of ground to plant things in. So yeah, there's one benefit to having a dedicated crafter is that they can break stuff down and get a lot better components. Okay, here we go. A Dance in Fire, Volume 5. Soap, the forest will eat love, straight ahead, stupid, and a stupid cow. The voice boomed out so suddenly that Decimus Scotty jumped. He stared off into the dim jungle glade from which he only heard animals and insect calls and the low whistling of wind moments before. It was a queer, oddly accented voice of indiscriminate gender, tremulous in its modulations, but unmistakably human, or at very least elven. An isolated Bosmer, perhaps, with a poor grasp of the Cyrodiilic language. After countless hours of plodding through the dense knot of Valenwood jungle, any voice of slight familiarity sounded wondrous. "Hello," he cried. "Beetles on any names?" "Certainly, yesterday, yes," the voice called back. "Who, what, and when, and mice?" "I'm afraid I don't understand," replied Scotty, turning toward the brambled tree, thick as a wagon, where the voice had issued. "But you needn't be afraid of me. My name is Decimus Scotty. I'm a Cyrodiil from the Imperial City. I came here to help rebuild Valenwood after the war, you see, and now I'm rather lost." "Gemstones and grilled slaves, the war," moaned the voice and broke down into sobs. There was one of the snug pods that would be cute, the one that has more land. Yeah, I'll have to look. I realized I wanted a house with gardenish area yesterday while I was kind of poking around. So yeah. What's with the big eyes shenanigans? "You know about the war? I wasn't sure. I wasn't even sure how far away from the border I am now." Scotty began slowly walking towards the tree. He dropped Regulus's satchel to the ground and held out his empty hands. "I'm unarmed. I only want to know the way to the closest town. I'm trying to meet my friend, Leotis Juris, in Sylvanar." "Sylvanar!" the voice laughed. It laughed even louder as Scotty encircled the tree. "Worms and wine, worms and wine. Sylvanar sings for worms and wine." There was nothing to be found anywhere around the tree. "I don't see you. Why are you hiding?" In frustration born of hunger and exhaustion, he struck the tree trunk. A sudden shiver of gold and red erupted from a hollow nook above, and Scotty was surrounded by 6 winged creatures, scarcely more than a few inches long. Bright crimson eyes were set on either side of a tunnel-like protuberances. The animals always opened mouths. They were legless, and their thin, rapidly beating, aureated wings seemed poorly constructed to transport their fat, swollen bellies. And yet they darted through the air like sparks from a fire. Whirling about the poor clerk, they began chattering what he now understood to be perfect nonsense. "Possibly. It depends on how close to the water I get the house." "Wines and worms, how far from the border am I? Academic garnishments, and alas, Leotis Juris." "Hello, I'm afraid I'm unarmed. Smoke and flames in the closest town is dear oblivion." "Swollen on bad meat, an indigo nimbus, but you needn't be afraid of me. Why are you hiding? Why are you hiding? Before I go to friend, love me, Lady Zulika." Furious with the mimics, Scotty swung his arms, driving them up into the treetops. He stomped back to the clearing and opened up the satchel again, as he had done some hours before. There was still, unsurprisingly, nothing useful in the bag, and nothing to eat in any corner or pocket. A goodly amount of gold, he smiled grimly, as he had done before, at the irony of being financially solvent in the jungle. A stack of neat blank contracts from Lord Vanic's building commission, some thin cord, and an oiled leather cloak for bad weather. Excuse me. At least Scotty considered he had not suffered rain. A rolling moan of thunder reminded Scotty of what he had suspected for some weeks now. He was cursed. Within an hour's time, he was wearing the cloak and clawing his way through mud. I'll have to see what it looks like what house I end up getting, and see what I kind of envision for it. I found the recipe for fabricant trees, doing all the hunting for other stuff, so we'll see. The trees, which had earlier allowed no sunlight in, provided no shelter against the pounding storm and wind. The only sounds that pierced the pelting of the rain were the mocking calls of the flying creatures flitting just above, babbling their nonsense. Scotty bellowed at them, threw rocks, but they seemed enamored of his company. While he was reaching to grab a promising-looking stone to hurl at his tormentors, Scotty felt something shift beneath his feet. Wet but solid ground suddenly liquefied and became a rolling tide, rushing him forward. Light as a leaf, he flew head over feet overhead until the mud flow dropped and he continued forward, plunging down into a river 20 feet below. I will, thank you, Jax. The storms passed quite as instantly as they had arrived. The sun melted the dark clouds and warmed Scotty as he swam for the shore. There, another sign of the Khajiit incursion into Valenwood greeted him. A small fishing village had stood there once, so recently extinct that it smoldered like a still warm corpse. Dirt cairns that had once housed fish by the smell of them had been ravaged, their bounty turned to ash. Rafts and skiffs lay broken, scuttled, half submerged. All the villagers were no more, either dead or refugees far away, or so he presumed. Something banged against the wall of one of the ruins. Scotty ran to investigate. "My name is Decimus Scotty," sang the first winged beast. "I'm a Cyrodiil from the Imperial City. I came here to help rebuild Valenwood after the war, you see, and now I am rather lost." "I swell to maculate Epinek," Apenek agreed one of its companions. "I don't see you. Why are you hiding?" As they fell into chattering, Scotty began to search the rest of the village. Surely the cats had left something behind, a scrap of dried meat, a morsel of fish sausage, anything. But they had been immaculate in their complete annihilation. There was nothing to eat anywhere. Scotty did find one item of possible use under the tumbled remains of the stone hut. A bow and 2 arrows made of bone. The string had been lost, likely burned away in the heat of the fire, but he pulled the cord from Regulus's satchel and restrung it. The creatures flew over and hovered nearby as he worked. "The convent of the sacred Leotis Juris? You know about the war, worms and wine, circumscribe a golden host, ape neck." She's at work. She's just got me playing on the background, like ASMR, so we might not get an answer from her, Jax. The moment the cord was taut, Scotty notched an arrow and swung around, pulling the string tight against his chest. The winged beasts, having had experience with archers before, shot off in all directions in a blur. They needn't have bothered. Scotty's first arrow dove into the ground 3 feet in front of him. He swore and retrieved it. The mimics, having likewise had experience with poor archers before, returned at once to hover nearby and mock Scotty. On his second shot, Scotty did much better, in purely technical terms. He remembered how the archers in Felinesti looked when he pulled himself out from under the Horror tick, and they were all taking aim at him. He extended his right hand, and right elbow in a symmetrical line, drawing the bow so his hand touched his jawline. And he could see the creature in his sight like the arrow was a finger he was pointing with. The bolt missed the target by only 2 feet, but it continued on its trajectory, snapping when it struck a rock wall. "Oh, I'm okay now, shenanigans. It's past. I'm okay now." Scotty walked to the river's edge. He had only 1 arrow left, and perhaps he considered it would be most practical to find a slow-moving fish and fire it on that. If he missed, at least there was a chance of breaking the shaft, less chance of breaking his shaft, and he could always retrieve it from the water. A rather torpid, whiskered fish rolled by, and he took aim at it. "My name is Decimus Scotty," one of the creatures howled, frightening the fish away. "Stupid and a stupid cow. Will you dance a dance in fire?" Scotty turned and aimed the arrow as he had done before. This time, however, he remembered to plant his feet as the archers had done, 7 inches apart, knees straight, left leg slightly forward to meet the angle of his right shoulder. He released the last arrow. The arrow also provided a serviceable prong for roasting the creature against the smoking hot stones of the ruins. Its other companions had disappeared instantly after the beast was slain, and Scotty was able to dine in peace. The meat proved to be delicious, if scarcely more than a first course. He was picking the last of it from the bones. When a boat sailed into view from around the bend of the river. At the helm were Bosmer sailors. Scotty ran to the bank and waved his arms. They averted their eyes and continued past. "You bloody callous bastards," Scotty howled. "Knaves, hooligans, ape-necks, scoundrels." A grey, whiskered form came out from the hatch, and Scotty immediately recognized him as Griff Malone, the poet-translator he had met in a caravan from Cyrodiil. He peered Scotty's direction, and his eyes lit up with delight. "Decimus Scotty, precisely the man I hoped to see. I want to get your thoughts on a rather puzzling passage in the Mornrad Ply Bar. It begins, 'I went weeping into the world, searching for wonders.' Perhaps you're familiar with it." I'd like nothing better than to discuss the Monred Ply bar with you, Griff. Scotty called back. Would you let me come aboard, though, first? Overjoyed at being on a ship bound for any port at all, Scotty was true to his word. For over an hour, as the boat rolled down the river past the blackened remnants of Bosmeri villages, he asked no questions and spoke nothing of his life over the past weeks. He merely listened to Malone's theories of Merithic Eldmiri Esoterica. Excuse me. The translator was undemanding of his guest's scholarship, accepting nods and shrugs as civilized conversation. He even produced some wine and fish jelly, which he shared with Scotty absent-mindedly as he expounded on his various theses. Oh, well, you have a good day, Jax. Thanks for dropping in. Finally, while Malone was searching for a reference to some minor point in his notes, Scotty asked, rather off subject, but I was wondering, where we're bound? The very heart of the province, Sylvanar, Malone said, not looking up from the passage she was reading. It's somewhat bothersome, actually, as I wanted to go to Woodhearth first to talk to a Bosmeri there who claims to have an original copy of Dorethi Yalmilchaid, if you can believe it. But for the time being, that has to wait. Somerset Isle has surrounded the city and is in the process of starving the citizenry until they surrender. It's a tiresome prospect, since the Bosmeri are happy to eat one another, so there's a risk that at the end only one fat wood elf will remain to wave the flag. That is vexing, agreed Scotty sympathetically. To the east, the Khajiit are burning everything, and to the west, the High Elves are waging war. I don't suppose the borders to the north are clear. They're even worse, replied Malone, fingering on the page, still distracted. The Cyrodiils and Redguards don't want Bosmer refugees streaming into their provinces. It only stands to reason. Imagine how much more criminally inclined they'd be now that they're homeless and hungry. So, murmured Scotty, feeling a shiver, we're trapped in Valenwood. Not at all. I need to leave fairly shortly myself, as my publisher has set a very definite deadline for my new book of translations. From what I understand, one merely petitions to the Sylvanar for special border protection, and one can cross into Cyrodiil with impunity. Petition the Sylvanar or petition at Sylvanar. Petition the Sylvanar at Sylvanar. It's an odd nomnoculture that is typical of this place, the sort of thing that makes my job as a translator that much more challenging. The Sylvanar, he, or rather they, are the closest the Bosmeri have to a great leader. The essential thing to remember about the Sylvanar. Malone smiled, finding the passage he was looking for. Here, a fortnight inexplicable, the world burns into a dance. There's that metaphor again. What are you saying about the Sylvanar? Asked Scotty. The essential thing to remember? I don't remember what I was saying, replied Malone, turning back to his oration. Oh, hey, I'm like Malone. I'm super absent-minded. In a week's time, the little boat bumped along the shallow, calmer waters of the foaming current the Xylo had become, and Decimus Scotty first saw the city of Sylvanar. If Felinesti was a tree, then Sylvanar was a flower. A magnificent pile of faded shades of green, red, blue, and white, shining with crystalline residue. Malone had mentioned offhand, when not otherwise explaining Eldmeri prosody, that Sylvanar had once been a blossoming glade in the forest, but, owing to some spell or natural cause, the tree's sap began flowing with translucent liquor. The process of the sap flowing and the hardening of over the colorful trees had formed the web of the city. Malone's description was intriguing, but it hardly prepared him for the city's beauty. What is the finest, most luxurious tavern here? Scotty asked one of the Bosmer boatmen. Prithala Hall, Malone answered, but why don't you just stay with me? I'm visiting an acquaintance of mine, a scholar I think you'll find fascinating. His hovel isn't much, but he has the most extraordinary ideas about the principles of a Merithic Eldmeri tribe, the Samrathai. Under any other circumstances I would happily accept, said Scotty graciously, but after weeks of sleeping on the ground or on a raft and eating whatever I could scrounge, I feel the need for some indulgent creature comforts. And then, after a day or two, I'll petition the Sylvanar for safe passage to Cyrodiil. The men bade each other goodbye. Griff Malone gave him the address of his publisher in the Imperial City, which Scotty accepted and quickly forgot. The clerk wandered the streets of Sylvanar, crossing the bridges of amber, admiring the petrified forest architecture. In front of a particularly estimable palace of silvery reflective crystal, he found Pritha Hall. He took the finest room and ordered a gluttonous meal of the finest quality. At a nearby table he saw two very fat fellows, a man and a Bosmer, remarking about how finer the food was there than at the Sylvanar's palace. They began to discuss the war and some issues of finances and rebuilding provincial bridges. The man noticed Scotty looking at them, and his eyes flashed recognition. Scotty, is that you? Kinnereth, where have you been? I've had to make all the contacts here on my own. At the sound of his voice, Scotty recognized him. The fat man was Leotis Juris, vastly engorged. End of Volume 5. Leotis Joris is such a pain in the ass. Oh, look, that dragon just landed. Come on, Mr. Hajimoto, just leave my booty alone. Oh, I'm out of space. Ooh, a Khajiit well. That one's pretty too. I remember it. Well, heck yeah. We're gonna have to sell a bunch of stuff. Okay, that should be enough space. I'm just fishing. Nice. Sweet. Oh, hey. Is this far enough away? I think it's far enough away. You think it's? I think it's far enough. We'll just go this way. Ta-da! No one can watch the dragon land every so often. Alrighty, Jax, thanks for dropping in. And I'll send you, send me a list of the stuff. I know you wanted the Markarth floors, but I don't remember what ceilings we were going for. So you'll have to give me a heads up, because I don't remember that anymore. I don't think I have that note. Don't you come after me, you jerk. Are you coming after me? It's not. Cool. He just wanted to make big scary sounds. Rudeness. Alright, here we go. A Dance in Fire, Volume 6. Decimus Scotti sat down, listening to Leotis Juris, who could hardly believe how fat his former colleague at Lord Atreus' building commission had become. The piquant aroma of a roasted meat dish before Scotti melted the... Whoop. The piquant aroma of the roasted meat dish before Scotti melted away. All the other sounds and textures of Peritha Hall vanished all around him, as if nothing else existed but the vast form of Juris. Scotti did not consider himself an emotional man, but he felt a tide flow over him at the sight and sound of the man whose badly written letters had been the guideposts that carried him from the Imperial City back in early Frostfall. "Where have you been?" Juris demanded again. "I told you to meet me in Felinesti weeks ago." "I was there weeks ago," Scotti stammered, too surprised to be indignant. "I got your note to meet in Athay, and so I went there, but the Khajiit had burned it to the ground. Somehow I found my way with the refugees in another village, and someone there told me that you had been killed." "And you believed that right away?" Juris sneered. "The fellow seemed very well informed about you. He was a clerk from Lord Vennick's building commission named Regulus, and he said that you had also suggested he come down to Valenwood to profit from the war." "Oh, yes," said Juris, after thinking a moment. "I recall the name now. Well, it's good for business to have 2 representatives from Imperial building commissions here. We just need to coordinate our bids, and all should be well." "Regulus is dead," said Scotti, "but I have his contracts from Lord Vennick's commission." "Even better," gasped Juris, impressed. "I never knew you were such a ruthless competitor, Decimus Scotti. Yes, this could certainly improve our position with the Sylvanar. Have I introduced you to Basseth here?" Scotti had only been dimly aware of the Bosmer's presence at the table with Juris, which was surprising, given that the Mer's girth nearly equaled his dining companion. The clerk nodded to Basseth coldly, still numb and confused. It had not left his mind that only an hour earlier Scotti had intended to petition the Sylvanar for safe passage through the border back to Cyrodiil. The thought of doing business with Juris, after all, of profiting from the Valenwood war with elsewhere, and now the second one with the Somerset Isle, seemed like something happening to another person. "Your colleague and I were talking about the Sylvanar," said Basseth, putting down the leg of mutton he had been gnawing on. "I don't suppose you've heard about his nature?" "A little, but nothing very specific. I got the impression that he's very important and very peculiar." "He's a representative of the people, legally, physically, and emotionally," explained Juris, a little annoyed at his new partner's lack of common knowledge. "When they're healthy, so is he. When they're mostly female, so is he. When they cry for food or trade or an absence of foreign interference, he feels it too and makes laws accordingly. In a way, he's a despot, but he's the people's despot." "That sounds," said Scotti, searching for the appropriate word, "like bunk." "Perhaps it is," shrugged Basseth, "but he has many rights as the voice of the people, including the granting of foreign building and trading contracts. It's not important whether you believe us. Just think of the Sylvanar as being like one of your mad emperors, like Pelagius, my bad. The problem facing us now is that since Valenwood is being attacked on all sides, the Sylvanar's aspect is now one of distrust and fear of foreigners. The one hope of his people, and thus of the Sylvanar himself, is that the Emperor will intervene and stop the war. Will he? Asked Scotty. You know as well as we do that the Emperor has not been himself lately. Juris helped himself to Regulus's satchel and pulled out the blank contracts. Who knows what he'll choose to do or not do? That reality is not our concern. But these blessings from the late good Sir Regulus make our job much simpler. They discussed how they would represent themselves to the Sylvanar into the evening. Scotty ate continuously, but not nearly so much as Juris and Besith. When the sun had begun to rise in the hills, its light reddening from the crystal walls of the tavern, Juris and Besith left to their rooms at the palace, granted to them diplomatically in lieu of an actual immediate audience with the Sylvanar. Scotty went to his room. He thought about staying up a little longer to ruminate over Juris's plans and see what might be the flaw in them, but upon touching the cool, soft bed, he immediately fell to sleep. The next afternoon, Scotty awoke, feeling himself again. In other words, timid. For several weeks now, he had been a creature bent on mere survival. He had been driven to exhaustion, attacked by several jungle beasts, starved, nearly drowned, and forced into discussions of ancient Aldmeri poetical works. The discussion he had with Juris and Besith about how to dupe the Sylvanar into signing their contracts seemed perfectly reasonable then. Scotty dressed himself in his old, battered clothes and went downstairs in search of food and a peaceful place to think. "You're up," cried Besith upon seeing him. "We should go to the palace now." "Now?" whined Scotty. "Look at me. I need new clothes. This isn't the way one should dress to pay a call on a prostitute, let alone the voice of the people of Valenwood. I haven't even bathed." "You must cease from this moment forward being a clerk and become a student of mercantile trade," said Leotis Juris grandly, taking Scotty by the arm and leading him into the sunlit boulevard outside. "The first rule is to recognize what you represent to the prospective client and what angle best suits you. You cannot dazzle him with opulent fashion and professional bearing, my dear boy, and it would be fatal if you attempted to. Trust me on this. Several others beside Besith and I are guests at the palace, and they have made the error of appearing too eager, too formal, too ready for business. They will never be granted audience with the Sylvanar, but we have remained aloof ever since the initial rejection. I've dallied about the court, spreading my knowledge of life in the Imperial City, having my ears pierced, attending prom-aids, eaten and drunk of all that was given to me. I dare say I've put on a pound or two. The message we sent is clear. It is in his, not our best interest, to meet." "Our plan worked," added Besith, when I told his minister that our Imperial representative had arrived, and that we were at last willing to meet with the Sylvanar this morning. We were told to bring you there straight away." "Aren't we late, then?" asked Scotty. "Very," laughed Juris, "but that, again, is part of the angle we're representing. Benevolent disinterest. Remember not to confuse the Sylvanar with conventional nobility. His is the mind of the common people. When you grasp that, you'll understand how to manipulate him." Juris spent the last several minutes of the walk through the city expounding on his theories about what Valenwood needed, how much, and at what price. They were staggering figures, far more construction and far higher costs than anything Scotty had been used to dealing with. He listened carefully. All around him, the city of Sylvanar revealed itself, glass and flower, roaring winds and beautiful inertia. When they reached the palace of the Sylvanar, Decimus Scotty stopped, stunned. Juris looked at him for a moment and then laughed. "It's quite bizarre, isn't it?" That it was. A frozen scarlet burst of twisted, uneven spires as if a rival sun rising. A blossom the size of the village, where courtiers and servants resembled nothing so much as insects walking about it sucking in ichor. Entering over a bent petal-like bridge, the two walked through the palace of unbalanced walls, where the partitions bent close together and touched. There was a shaded hall or a small chamber. Where they warped away from one another, there was a courtyard. There were no doors anywhere, nor any way to get to the Sylvanar but by crossing through the entire spiral of the palace, through meetings and bedrooms, dining halls, past dignitaries, consorts, musicians, and many guards. "It's an interesting place," said Besith, "but not very much privacy. Of course that suits the Sylvanar well." When they reached the inner corridors, 2 hours after they first entered the palace, good lord, guards brandishing blades and bows stopped them. "We have an audience with the Sylvanar," said Juris patiently. "This is Lord Decimus Scotty, the Imperial representative." One of the guards disappeared down the winding corridor and returned moments later with a tall, proud Bosmer clad in a loose robe of patchwork leather. He was the Minister of Trade. "The Sylvanar wishes to speak with Lord Decimus Scotty alone." It was not the place to argue or show fear, so Scotty stepped forward, not even looking toward Juris and Besith. He was certain they were showing their masks of benevolent indifference. Following the minister into the audience chamber, Scotty recited to himself all the facts and figures Juris had presented to him. He willed himself to remember the angle and the image he must project. The audience chamber of the Sylvanar was an enormous dome, where the walls bent from bowl-shaped at the base inward to almost meeting at the top. A thin ray of sunlight streamed through the fissure hundreds of feet above and directly upon the Sylvanar, who stood upon a puff of shimmering gray powder. For all the wonder of the city and the palace, the Sylvanar himself looked perfectly ordinary. An average, blandly handsome, slightly tired-looking, extraordinary wood elf of the type one might see in any capital in the Empire. It was only when he stepped from the dais that Scotty noticed an eccentricity in his appearance. He was very short. Alright, 1 second. I need to get some more water. I needed to get another mint, too. Oh, might as well look for another fishing hole. Let's see. There's one right there. Too bad we don't get to see the dragon. Oh well. Can't have it all. Oh, is that a chest? Nope. Oh well. Alrighty. I had to speak with you alone, said the Sylvanar in a voice common and unrefined. May I see your papers? Scotty handed him the blank contracts from Lord Venetch's building commission. The Sylvanar studied them, running his finger over the embossed seal of the Emperor before handing them back. He suddenly seemed shy, looking to the floor. There are many charlatans at my court who wish to benefit from the wars. I thought you and your colleagues were among them, but these contracts seem genuine. Oh man, I need to sell stuff. Always. Gonna clear out a bunch of space. Cool. Goodbye, Mr. Commerce Delegate. Mrs. Commerce Delegate. Persona Commerce Delegate. Okay. Yes, they are, said Scotty calmly. The Sylvanar's conventional aspect made it easy for Scotty to speak, with no formal greetings, no deference, exactly as Juris had instructed. It seems most sensible to begin straight away talking about the roads which need to be rebuilt. And then the harbors that the Altmiri have destroyed, and then I can give you my estimates on the cost of resupplying and renovating the trade routes. Why hasn't the Emperor seen fit to send a representative when the war with Elsewhere began 2 years ago? Asked the Sylvanar glumly. Scotty thought a moment before replying. Of all the common Bosmeri he had met in Valenwood, the greedy, frightened mercenaries who had escorted him from the border, the hard-drinking revelers and expert pest exterminating archers in the western cross of Philanesti, nosy old Mother Pascot and Havel Slump, Captain Balfix, the poor, sadly reformed pirate, the terrified but hopefully refugees of Athe and Grenos, the mad, murderous, self-devouring wild hunt of Vindici, the silent dour boatman hired by Griff Malone, the degenerate, grasping Basseth. If one creature represented their total disposition and that of many more throughout the province, what would be his personality? Scotty was a clerk by occupation and nature, instinctively, comfortably, cataloguing and filing, making things fit in a system. If the soul of Valenwood were to be filled, where would it be put? The answer came upon him almost before he posed himself the question. Denial. I'm afraid that question doesn't interest me, said Scotty. Now can we get back to the business at hand? All afternoon, Scotty and the Sylvanar discussed the pressing needs of Valenwood. Every contract was filled and signed, so much was required, and there were so many costs associated with addendums and codicils, had to be scribbled into the margins of the papers, and those had to be re-signed. Scotty maintained his benevolent indifference, but he found that dealing with a Sylvanar was not quite the same as dealing with a simple, sullen child. The voice of the people knew certain practical, everyday things very well: the yields of fish, the benefits of trade, the condition of every township and forest in his province. "We will have a banquet tomorrow night in celebration of this commission," said the Sylvanar at last. "Best make it tonight," replied Scotty. "We should leave for Cyrodiil with the contracts tomorrow, so I'll need a safe passage to the border. We best not waste any more time." "Agreed," said the Sylvanar, and called for his Minister of Trade to put his seal on the contracts and arrange for the feast. Scotty left the chamber and was greeted by Basith and Juris. Their faces showed the strain of maintaining the illusion of unconcern for too many hours. As soon as they were out of sight of the guards, they begged Scotty to tell them all. When he showed them the contract, Basith began weeping with delight. "Anything about the Sylvanar that surprised you?" asked Juris. "I hadn't expected him to be half my height." "Was he?" Juris looked mildly surprised. "He must have shrunk since I tried to have an audience with him earlier. Maybe there's something to all that nonsense about him being affected by the plight of his people." And that is the end of Volume 6. I think we only have one volume left. Maybe more. I don't think it's more, though. I think it's only one more volume. And then it is time to call it. Let's see if I can't just bust through. A Dance and Fire, Volume 7. Scene: Sylvanar Valenwood. Date: 13th Sun's Dusk, 3rd Era, 397. The banquet at the palace of the Sylvanar was well attended by every jealous bureaucrat and trader who had attempted to contract the rebuilding of Valenwood. They looked on Decimus Scotty, Leotis Juris, and Basith with undisguised hatred. It made Scotty very uncomfortable, but Juris delighted in it. As the servants brought in platter after platter of roasted meats, Juris poured himself a cup of jaga and toasted his clerk. "I can confess it now," said Juris. "I had grave doubts about inviting you to join me on this adventure. All the other clerks and agents of building commissions I contacted were more outwardly aggressive, but none of them made it through, let alone to the audience chamber of the Sylvanar, let alone broker the deals on their own like you did. Come, have a cup of jaga with me." "No, thank you," said Scotty. "I had too much of that drug in Felinesti and nearly got sucked dry by a giant tick because of it. I'll find something else to drink." Scotty wandered about the hall until he saw some diplomats drinking mugs of a steaming brown liquid poured from a large silver urn. He asked them if it was tea. "Tea made from leaves?" scoffed the first diplomat. "Not in Valenwood. This is rot meth." Scotty poured himself a mug and took a tentative sip. It was gamey, bitter, and sugared, and very salty. At first it seemed very disagreeable to his palate, but a moment later he found he had drained the mug and was pouring another. His body tingled. All the sounds in the chamber seemed oddly disjointed, but not frighteningly so. "So you're the fellow who got the Sylvanar to sign all those contracts," said the second diplomat. "That must have required some deep negotiation." Not at all, not at all. Just a little basic understanding of mercantile trading," grinned Scotty, pouring himself a third mug of rot meth. "The Sylvanar was very eager to involve the Imperial State with the affairs of Valenwood. I was very eager to take a percentage of the commission. With all that blessed eagerness, it was a matter of putting quill to contract, bless you." "Have you been in the employ of His Imperial Majesty very long?" asked the first diplomat. It's a bite or rather a bit more complicated than that in the Imperial City, between you and me. I don't really have a job. I used to work for Lord Atreus and his building commission, but I got sacked. And then the contracts are for Lord Vinnick and his building commission, because I got him from this fellow Regulus, who was a competitor, but still a very fine fellow, until he made dead by those Khajiit. Scotty drained his fifth mug. "When I go back to the Imperial City, then the real negotiations can begin. Bless you. I can go to my old employer and to Lord Bennick and say, 'Here, look, which one of you wants these commissions?' And they'll fall over each other to take them from me. It'll be a bidding war for my percentage, the likes of which no one nowhere has never seen." "So you're not a representative of His Imperial Majesty the Emperor?" asked the first diplomat. "Didn't you hear what I said, you stupid?" Scotty felt a surge of rage, which quickly subsided. He chuckled and poured himself a seventh mug. "The building commissions are privately owned, but they're still representatives of the Emperor, so I am a representative of the Emperor, or I will be, when I get these contracts in. It's very complicated. I can understand why you're not following me. Bless you, it's not like all the poet said, a dance in fire, if you follow the illusion, that is to say, allusion." "And your colleagues, are they representatives of the Emperor?" said the second diplomat. Scotty burst into laughter, shaking his head. The diplomats bade him their respects and went to talk to the minister. Scotty stumbled out of the palace and reeled through the strange organic avenues and boulevards of the city. It took him several hours to find his way to Peritha Hall and to his room. Once there, he slept, very nearly, on his bed. The next morning, he woke to Juris and Basseth in his room shaking him. He was half asleep and unable to open his eyes fully, but otherwise fine. The conversation with the diplomats floated in his mind like a haze, like an obscure childhood memory. "What in Mara's name is rot meth?" he asked quickly. "Rancid, strongly fermented meat juices, with lots of spices to kill the poisons," smiled Basseth. "I should have warned you to stay with the Jaga." "You must understand the meat mandate by now," laughed Juris. "These Bosmeri would rather eat each other than touch the fruit of the vine or the field." "What did I say to those diplomats?" cried Scotty, panicking. "Nothing bad, apparently," said Juris, pulling out some papers. "Your escorts are downstairs to bring you to the Imperial Province. Here are your papers of safe passage. The Sylvanar seems very impatient about business proceeding forward rapidly. He promises to send you some sort of rare treasure when the contracts are fulfilled. See, he's already given me something." Juris showed off his newly bejeweled earring, a beautiful, large, faceted ruby. Basseth showed that he had a similar one. The two fat fellows left the room so Scotty could dress and pack. A full regiment of the Sylvanar's guards was on the street in front of the tavern. They surrounded a carriage crested with the official arms of Valenwood. Still dazed, Scotty climbed in, and the captain of the guard gave the signal. They began a quick gallop. Scotty shook himself and then peered behind. Basseth and Juris were waving him goodbye. "Wait," Scotty cried. "Aren't you coming back to the Imperial Province, too?" "The Sylvanar asked that we stay behind as Imperial representatives," yelled Leotis Juris. "In case there's a need for more contracts and negotiations. He's appointed us underape. Some sort of special honor for foreigners at court. Don't worry, lots of banquets to attend. You can handle the negotiations with Vinek and Atreus yourself, and we'll keep things settled here." Juris continued to yell advice about business, but his voice became indistinct with distance. Soon it disappeared altogether as the convoy rounded the streets of Sylvanar. The jungle loomed suddenly, and then they were in it. Scotty had only gone through it by foot or along the rivers by slow-moving boats. Now it flashed all around him in profusions of greens. The horses seemed even faster moving through the underbrush than on the smooth paths of the city. None of the weird sounds or dank smells of the jungle penetrated the escort. It felt to Scotty as if he were watching a play about the jungle with a background of quickly moving scrim, which offered only the merest suggestion of the place. Okay, I'll find another fishing hole. Which I'm pretty sure there's like one over here somewhere. I could be wrong. It has been forever. Am I going to get eaten alive? I hope not. Okay, cool. No eating alives. Ooh, chest though. Hey. Cool. Okay. Where are all my fishing holes? Oh, there's one. That may be the perfect one to finish the story on, too. Okay. So it went for 2 weeks. There was lots of food and water in the carriage with the clerk, so he merely ate and slept as the caravan pressed endlessly on. From time to time he'd hear the sound of blades clashing, but when he looked around, whatever had attacked the caravan had long since been left behind. At last they reached the border, where an imperial garrison was stationed. Scotty presented the soldiers who met the carriage with the papers. They asked him a barrage of questions that he answered monosyllabically. I can't say it. And then let him pass. It took several more days to arrive at the gates of the imperial city. The horses that had flown so fast through the jungles now slowed down in the unfamiliar territory of the wooded Colovian estates. By contrast, the cries of his province's birds and smells of his province's plant life brought Decimus Scotty alive, as if he had been dreaming all those past months. At the gates of the city, Scotty's carriage door was opened for him, and he stepped out on uncertain legs. Before he had a moment to say something to the escort, they had vanished, galloping back south through the forest. The first thing he did now that he was home was go to the closest tavern and have fruit and tea and bread. If he never ate meat again, he told himself that would suit him very nicely. Negotiations with Lord Atreus and Lord Venek proceeded immediately. Thereafter, it was most agreeable. Both commissions recognized how lucrative the rebuilding of Valenwood would be for their legacy. Lord Vennick claimed quite justifiably that as the contracts had been written on forms notarized by his commission, he had the legal right to them. Lord Atreus claimed that Decimus Scotti was his agent and representative, and that he had never been released from employment. The Emperor was called to arbitrate, but he claimed to be unavailable. His adviser, the Imperial battle mage Jaegar Tharn, had disappeared long ago and could not be called on for his wisdom in impartial mediation. Scotti lived very comfortably off the bribes from Lord Atreus and Lord Vennick. Every week a letter would arrive from Juris or Basseth asking about the status of negotiations. Gradually, these letters ceased coming, and more urgent ones came from the Minister of Trade and the Sylvanar himself. The War of the Blue Divide with Somerset Isle ended, with the Altmiri winning several new coastal islands from the Wood Elves. The war with Elsewhere continued, ravaging the eastern borders of Valenwood. Still, Vennick and Atreus fought over who would help. One fine morning in the early spring of the year Third Era 398, a courier arrived at Decimus Scotti's door. Lord Vennick has won the Valenwood Commission and requests that you and your contracts come to his hall at your earliest convenience. Has Lord Atreus decided not to challenge further? Asked Scotti. He's been unable to, having died very suddenly just now from a terribly unfortunate accident, said the courier. Scotti had wondered how long it would be before the Dark Brotherhood was brought in for final negotiations. As he walked toward Lord Vennick's building commission, a long, severe piece of architecture on a minor but respectable plaza, he wondered if he had played the game as he ought to have. Could Vennick be so rapacious as to offer him a lower percentage of the commission now that his chief competitor was dead? Thankfully, he had discovered Lord Vennick had already decided to pay Scotti what he had proposed during the heat of the winter negotiations. His advisers had explained to him that other, lesser building commissions might come forward, unless the matter were handled quickly and fairly. Glad we have all the legal issues done with, said Lord Vennick fondly. Now we can get to the business of helping the poor Bosmiri and collecting the profits. It's a pity you weren't our representative for all the troubles with Bendemark and the Arnasian business. There will be plenty more wars, I'm sure of that. Scotti and Lord Vennick sent words to the Sylvanar that at last they were prepared to honor the contracts. A few weeks later, they held a banquet in the honor of the profitable enterprise. Decimus Scotti was the darling of the imperial city, and no expense was spared to make it an unforgettable evening. As Scotti met the nobles and wealthy merchants who would be benefiting from his business dealings, an exotic but somehow faintly familiar smell rose in the ballroom. He traced it to its source, a thick roasted slab of meat, so long and thick it covered several platters. The Cyrodiilic revelers were eating it ravenously, unable to find the words to express their delight at its taste and texture. It's like nothing I've ever had before. It's like pig-fed venison. Do you see the marbling of fat and meat? It's a masterpiece. Scotti went to take a slice, but then he saw something, embedded deep in the dried and rendered roast. He nearly collided with his new employer, Lord Vennick, as he stumbled back. Where did this come from? Scotti stammered. From our client, the Sylvanar, beamed his lordship. It's some kind of local delicacy. They call it anthrapa. Scotti vomited, and didn't stop for some time. It cast rather a temporary pall on the evening, but when Decimus Scotti was carried off to his manor house, the guests continued to dine. The anthrapa was the delight of all. Even more so when Lord Vennick himself took a slice and found the first of 2 rubies buried within. How very clever of the Bosmer to invent such a dish, the Cyrodiils agreed. End of the last volume. Yucky. That's disgusting. Alright, my friends. With that, we end our stream for tonight. For tonight, goodness, I'm gonna have to get used to this whole today, not tonight thing. But if you've been with me a while, you know I used to stream at nighttime. I'm just, not in that business no more. Well, I still do. We still stream on Twitch for now. I don't know. Maybe I'll do Fridays on Twitch and then just during the week I'll stream on YouTube. I don't know. But anyway, it's been a blast. I have loved reading A Dance in Fire with y'all, and I hope y'all enjoyed listening to me be very entertained by this story. I do have a Discord, which is linked in my channel. My channel description. So if you would like to join, that's where you would go join at, and that's how you would join in when we do our we play ESO together and that sort of thing, and also where you get notifications and where I post stupid memes. But I hope y'all have a lovely, lovely rest of your day, and I'll hang out with you later. Tomorrow we'll be back at noon for another 2 hour sprint. Probably some more stories because this was a lot of fun. We'll continue doing the Imperial Library, the books in order. So I don't know exactly what books we'll be doing tomorrow, but I'm pretty sure they're not going to be as long as this one because this is one of the longer ones. I think the only thing longer than this one is what is it? The one about the Mad Queen, the Wolf Queen. Yeah, that one's like so long, but we've got a ways to go before we get there. So y'all will catch up. I hope y'all have a lovely night, day. Damn, I go again. Have a lovely day. It is 2 o'clock here in Texas, so I have the sun shining on my face, and I still keep saying nighttime. Y'all have a good time. Talk to y'all later. Bye.